1. To begin with, I work for Walmart as a cashier. I've experienced some ridiculous trends and some interesting people come my way while being a cashier. It's not a fun job, because of the unwanted attention from entitled people that clearly want to make your day miserable. For those who don't know, Walmart isn't theft-proof guaranteed. My store has been robbed quite a lot recently, and we're being pressured by managers to keep an eye out for any suspicious or potential thefts. It isn't helping with customer satisfaction, but it helps keep our jobs and less cut hours. The reason I'm wondering if this is a trend is because of how often it's happening. I've had my share of trends, like attempting to buy a part of the store, or hide in the ball pit or toilet paper fort. Lately, we've got customers acting like big shots in front of the camera while talking about the products they're buying. And a few months ago, some of our employees caught an entitled guy attempting to steal products by bagging them at the self-checkout and leaving without paying. After he was confronted, he claimed to have purchased the items and that the machine didn't give him a receipt. He then began recording with his phone and shouting, "It's because I'm black, and you are all racist, and I'm letting my followers know how racist you are." Everyday BS. A manager called the police shortly after he refused to cooperate, but all the while he was still ranting that we stopped him because of the color of his skin. When the police arrived, he goes off on them, blaming us, because we think all races are unequal. My manager reassured him that 60% of thefts that happen in the store are from white customers and are treated like every other thief. The police later asked to watch the recordings. Surprise, he demands we take his word for it, and his recording is evidence. Later, he was arrested after the police reviewed the tapes for attempted theft. A few days later, after this guy was arrested, the same incident happened with a different person who also ranted while recording to his followers on how racist we were, while also trying to steal at the self-checkout, and eventually got arrested for attempted theft. After that, we got backlash and hate speak from customers accusing us of being racist. It's happened a few more times, attempted theft. Employees are accused of acting inappropriately, and people agree without knowing the actual cause, just because they don't want to be seen as racist. It got bad to the point where the manager demands that employees check the receipts at the door more often, and that maintenance closed down the self-checkout machine for a few weeks, because of the attempted theft and harassment from customers that think all Walmart employees are racist. After the self-checkout is closed, there are less theft from the store. It still happens when people won't show their receipt to confirm their purchase. I still don't know if it's an entitled new trend, or if it's just entitled people hoping that we'll be naive. 2. When I turned 21, my mother felt entitled enough to share her news of her and my father's divorce to a room full of my friends, as I was actively cross-faded, and proceeded to tell everyone that my dad abused her, he didn't, and tried to make my friends leave my birthday event. I proceeded to get even more drunk and confess to everyone all the hardships I faced, when I've been keeping them hidden all these years for a reason. I ended up crying in my bedroom until everyone left. When I turned 24, oh Lord, this one, I couldn't even talk in the moment, but my now boyfriend of 2 years invited his friends. I invited mine to come out and enjoy drinks and my birthday. My brothers bailed because of a limited time event on a game they were grinding for. My father didn't join in the festivities, so we're all drinking and having a good time. One of my boyfriend's friends shows up uninvited, but brought my boyfriend's roommate there that we did invite and just decided to stay for free food. I didn't mind. I started to notice over a few hours they really didn't want to stay. A dude screamed about not having water, showed him where to find cups and the dispenser so he could do it himself. He refused. My boyfriend did it for them. Proceeded to answer a phone call while we were playing Super Smash Bros. At max volume, like we weren't even there. They were eating food and stuffing their garbage into our couch, easily visible. Didn't ask where the trash can was, and if we touched it, it sparked a fight. My dad called me upstairs to sing happy birthday, eat cake, and be merry. I was tipsy, but mostly stoned. Getting easily distracted, friends said they were leaving to visit someone else, and we all asked why not stay or have them come. We were all having fun. Why not make it even more fun? Dude literally screamed no because I already ruined his friend group once. He didn't want me to do it again. I just kind of sat there in silence. What the fuck just happened? My sister-in-law, my boyfriend, my best friend are all like, "Are you okay?" And I was kind of just gone. I went white and silent. I wasn't laughing anymore, and I swear everyone in the room was about to throw hands. They quickly ran out the door, and my friends just kinda kept close to me all night. I dated one of their friends a long time ago. I moved away after the breakup, because that guy told lies about me to anyone who would listen, and instead of facing it, I ran away. He basically treated me like I was about to do it to his best friend, when we've been together for almost 3 years. At the time, it was 2.5. 3. I recently moved back into my childhood home. My parents and I first moved here when I was around 2 years old. I moved out when I was around 24. It feels great to be home. I'm living here alone as my parents are now living at their new house. The neighborhood is a typical California suburb built in the late 1950s, early 1960s. Many of the houses, including the one I live in, have finished hardwood floors underneath the carpeting. A somewhat important detail for later. The lady who owns the house across the street doesn't live there and rents her house out to tenants. We don't usually see her unless they're in between tenants, in which case she and her husband come over periodically to check on the house. During these visits, if she sees any of the neighbors, she will walk up to them and say hello. But it's not just a friendly hello. She is the type of person who will basically talk at you rather than to you. She will ramble on and hardly let you get a word in, until you make up some excuse that you need to go inside just to get away from her. As a kid, she didn't bother me. In fact, I kind of enjoyed it when she was in town. I first saw her when maybe I was around 3, not long after my parents and I moved into the neighborhood. I think the person who had been living there at the time who was in the process of moving out was her son. I thought she was nice, but my mom seemed rather annoyed whenever she would invite herself over. Eventually, a new family moved in, and we didn't see her again for several years. When I was around 10 or 11, the family who had been living there, whose son I would occasionally play with, but we were not close friends, moved out. And the landlady once again would periodically come over to check on the house. At the time, I still thought she was nice, but I could definitely see why she would get on people's nerves. She did about 90% of the talking and 10% of the listening during conversations. At one point, she mentioned that she was a descendant of US Presidents John Adams and John Quincy Adams. I thought that was rather cool, but I've actually heard a lot of people claim to be descended from or related to the Presidents Adams, and I'm not sure which ones actually are related to them or are just saying it for clout, seeing as how Adams is such a common last name. In any case, the next tenants were a very nice Korean family. From what I recall, they were very good neighbors, no issues with noise or anything like that. They lived there for about 10 years. Not long before they moved out, I saw them put an old-fashioned washing machine out front of their house. By that time, I was in college and was taking an appliance repair class, and washing machines were what I specialized in. I asked if they were getting rid of it, and if so, could I have it? They said yes, so I brought it to my class. It actually was broken beyond repair, hence why they were getting rid of it, and my class and I had no choice but to scrap it. Shortly afterwards, they asked me if I wanted their dryer too, which I also brought to my class. They moved out the next day. Now here's where the landlady showed her true colors. Note that I wasn't there to witness this, and I didn't find out about it until recently from one of the other neighbors after I moved back. Apparently, after the family had told her they were planning to move out, she came over to inspect the place, and wasn't happy with the condition the house was in, even though I think it was just normal wear and tear that one would expect if you live anywhere for an extended length of time. She would not let them leave until they had cleaned the place up to her satisfaction. In particular, she was upset that the carpet was dirty and demanded that they replace it, There was a bunch of other things that she was unhappy about in addition to the carpet. She rambled on and on about what needed to be done, and how she expected them to pay for everything themselves, and blah, blah, blah. She was still rambling as she was walking down the front steps to her car, and as a result, she wasn't paying attention to where she was walking. Splat! She missed the lower step and took a tumble, landing flat on her back. They had to call an ambulance and take her to the hospital. She never fully recovered from the fall, and has had trouble with her back ever since then. Needless to say, she's even more grumpy and unpleasant than she was before. The family paid for the new carpet and all the other repairs that the landlady demanded and moved out. And of course, the first thing that the old bag did once the house was vacant was give the place a thorough renovation, including pulling up all the newly installed carpeting and refinishing the hardwood floors underneath. None of the tenants who have lived there since have stayed very long. 4. I work in the hotel business and have for years on the audit, third shift. In that time, I've seen a lot of stuff. Sleepwalkers without any clothes, old ladies wanting me to be fired because I wouldn't break the rules for them, having a gun pointed at me during a robbery. People injuring themselves so they could get a free night. Someone tearing up a room and then going to the manager, seriously asking, "Sir, may I have a room?" A staff member claiming the hotel had been robbed, but had taken the money themselves. Someone dying of an overdose, then this person's boss and coworkers claiming they didn't know who he was, and expecting the hotel staff to lie to the police for them. People throwing a party in their room and telling me it's okay, as they were part of a wedding group, and that they should be able to make as much noise as they want at 1 a.m. They got tossed out, but they didn't seem to even consider the possibility they did anything wrong. Being accused of stealing a woman's purse from a room and not getting an apology when the purse was later found in the room, and much more. Now, I'm not going to say I've seen it all, because I know that there is going to be something new and probably bad that will come my way, and recently it did. It was a weekend, and we had a sports team in-house with the players being about 10 to 12 years old. This means there are a bunch of kids running around while their parents are up in the room partying. I don't know who made more noise, the parents or the kids. Next morning, this group gets read the riot act and told if there are any problems the next night from them, the whole team gets booted out of the hotel. Next night, I come in for third shift, and the second shift front desk person, Bill, said there's been no issues and the team has been quiet. Great. No more problems. As we're changing over the shift, a man comes down to the front desk, clearly very angry. Bit of a raging asshole, truth be told. He starts off by saying that there was a problem, kids running all over the place, their parents are out in the halls swearing and so on. As he's complaining about the parents swearing, he's dropping the F-bomb every 2 or 3 words. I politely ask what room he was in, and he starts raging at Bill. Bill tries to say something, but this man keeps interrupting him. During this, I'm checking the computer and seeing what room number he's in, and basic info on him. Bill, while new, isn't going to let him walk all over him and tells the guy to be quiet and let him talk, and then tells the man that there hadn't been any complaints until he came down. I tell Bill I'm going to patrol the building and see what and where the problem is. The man demands to know where I'm going rather loudly, clearly not happy about it. I told him I was going to check on the building, which he said I didn't have to do. I left anyway, and he turned to continue bitching at Bill. I patrol the building and find nothing. Everything is quiet. There are a couple of people walking around, but they aren't making any noise. I get back to the desk, and I hear the man telling Bill that he knows there are problems because when he checked in, he heard someone complaining about it. Yes, he's complaining about something that happened the day before he checked in. I tell the man and Bill there were no problems, and he tries to argue. I stress that there wasn't anyone causing problems and that he should go back to his room. He finally left, muttering under his breath. You would think that was the end of it, right? No. About 15 or 20 minutes later, he comes back down to the desk claiming there is a problem again, kids running in the halls, parents swearing, etc. And he is still dropping F-bombs all the time. I tell him there was a problem yesterday and there was not a problem now. He goes into "don't you believe me" mode. This is a trap. If I say I didn't believe him, he would say I was calling him a liar. He was lying, but saying that is a bad thing, unfortunately. So I told him I believe my eyes, which he didn't have a comeback for. Then he goes back to "you got a problem," and "that guy didn't know anything." By this time, I'm getting sick of him dropping F-bombs all the time and tell him if he does not stop swearing, I would kick him out, and I could do it legally. Which is true, my state has a law that you can kick people out of a hotel for excessive swearing. The man was shocked by that.
"You're gonna kick me out? But what about those kids?"
Those kids aren't causing me any problems, you are causing me problems. Now, if there isn't anything else, I have another guest to take care of. He walked away muttering,
"He's 3 days old. He doesn't know anything."
I think he was talking about Bill rather than me. Fortunately, I didn't hear from him again. Apparently, he thought if I would admit something was wrong, he could get a free room as a result. 5. So there's going to need to be a little bit of context to fully explain the situation. I run and manage a small inn by myself, 10 rooms in total. There's a house I live in that's right next to the inn, so I'm working literally 24/7, and I'm the only one here. The hotel is old, having been built back in the 70s and is currently under new ownership since February of this year, so only about 2 months now. I've been working and living here since January. The new owners have been working on renovating all the rooms slowly and started by turning off all the propane heaters to eventually switch to electric heat. Right now, there are brand new space heaters in all of the rooms, except 7, 8, and 10. We've had to keep the old space heaters in those rooms because the new ones kept tripping the breaker. However, on full blast they will still turn those rooms into ovens. There were plans on rewiring everything sometime around last month, but just a week before they were about to have someone do that, the awning collapsed due to all the snow we received this year. Awning, overhang, carport, whatever you want to call it, came down and crushed my car. So we've had to suspend a lot of their projects so we could focus on getting that fixed. But insurance is a pain, so we're not even sure when we can start getting it cleaned up. We've had to make a temporary office in one of the rooms because the typical office was now inaccessible due to the fallen awning. But it hasn't been a problem so far, except for me, because I have to wait for a phone call to know anyone's arrived now, and have to walk out there to make reservations and check people in. Unlike before, when the office was attached to the house, and I could check people in and make reservations a lot quicker and easier. Now, our prices aren't cheap, but we also aren't super expensive. We've priced the rooms in the middle since we are a 3-star hotel. Also good to keep in mind that it's the middle of the weekend, and the weekend has always had higher rates. To start out, the main focus of our story will be my entitled guest. Don't know his name, and don't care to know his name. We'll call him Kevin. Kevin and his family called sometime around 10:30 last night, inquiring about some rooms for him and his family. It was his wife on the line, and she was asking about the prices that are listed through Expedia. Now, I absolutely despise Expedia. They give their members rates way below our typical room rate, and then we make hardly a dime off of them, after all the fees we have to apply to them. But if people book through Expedia and it comes to that price, it's not my problem. That's Expedia's deal. But I can't give Expedia prices as flat rates over the phone. We aren't them. After telling them this, they changed their tone to just ask for a senior discount. I would have no idea if they were lying or not just to receive the discount, but I'm not going to argue. I honestly give discounts all the time to people who ask nicely. Like, it's literally not a big deal. Anyway, 30 minutes later they arrive and pull into our tiny parking lot with a pickup and a massive trailer behind them. I'm terrible at estimating how big things are, but it was bigger than the truck itself. Looked about the size of a large horse hauler. But our parking lot is on the small side, barely even capable of fitting 10 cars in the lot, and this thing takes up half the available space. I suggest they parked it on the side of the road next to the house where they would have a much easier time getting out, and they told me they were fine where they were at. People usually move their cars after check-in, so I didn't see a problem with them being there for the time being. During check-in, however, they asked to see the rooms first. That's not a big deal, but the way he asked was kinda rude and out of the blue. I hadn't even checked him in or charged his card yet, and he asked, "Can I get the room key?" After I gave him a questioning look, he then clarified it was to see the room. He walked over to the king room he had booked, checked the firmness of the bed, and said, "Yep, this is good." I asked him if he wanted to see the other room he had reserved as well, and he said, "No, it doesn't matter, we're staying here tonight." So they instantly start unpacking all of their things to take to their rooms, and I had to remind them I still needed a signature because I hadn't charged them for the room yet. It took a few minutes before the wife came in, and I repeated to her the price of the rooms. This will be the second time I told them, and she said, "Yeah, that's fine." She then thoroughly inspected the receipt I gave her, and I'm honestly not sure what she was even looking for. I told her the price. They had gotten the senior discount on the rooms like they wanted, and they never made a fuss about the price. I had thought they wanted a cheaper deal because of the prices Expedia listed us as, but they had booked our most expensive rooms and didn't even try to negotiate. Again, I give pretty good discounts to people who ask nicely, or when they tell me they're on a budget. But those kinds of people also don't book the most expensive rooms. As they were leaving our temporary office, Kevin stated, "No one else is going to show up tonight, so I'm going to stay parked there. We'll be leaving pretty early." Now, this was a problem. He was parked directly in the center of the parking lot, and I had to tell them I had people come in to book a room at all hours of the night, sometimes even up to 2 a.m. I suggest again that he park on the side of the road where there was more room for him, and he simply said he'd just move over, which he did, although he still took up a lot of space. It wasn't a busy night though, and there was no actually room for someone to come past him to come to the temporary office, so I just let it be. I asked if they needed anything else and told them that if they did need anything, to just call the hotel number. I'm here literally 24/7, and I will do my best to help with what they need. Now fast forward to the next morning, and I'm woken promptly at 6 by a phone call. It's Kevin calling, and the first thing he says to me is something like, "This was the worst experience I've ever had at a hotel. I demand a refund." I don't remember his exact words because I had just woken up. I don't wake up usually until around 8 because of how messed up my sleep schedule has become. You know, with people showing up randomly at 2 a.m. for a room. So I ask him what the issue was, and he tells me there was absolutely no heat in the rooms, no hot water, and they couldn't get any sleep because the space heaters were rattling so loud. I ask him if I could come outside to take a look at the heaters, and he tells me that's fine. When he asked me the night before if the thermostat worked, I told him it did. However, I did not realize that the owners had fully turned off the propane heaters, so the only thing heating the room was the space heater. As I stated before, the space heaters work very well with warming up the rooms. They just stay at their lowest setting when they aren't occupied, so it's up to the guest to turn it up, if they want more heat. Anyway, as I came to check on the heater, I walked in and it definitely was not cold. Outside I was shivering, but not in the room. After checking in, that's when I realized the pilot light for the heater was out. I apologized for my mistake, but reiterated that the space heater was more than enough to warm up the room, and asked them if they had turned it up from the lowest setting. My question was blatantly disregarded as he said, "It doesn't matter if the space heater works or not. I had asked if the thermostat worked, and it clearly does not. The space heater rattled all night, keeping us from having a good night's sleep." He then restates that there is no hot water, and I tell him he's on one of the furthest out rooms from the inn, and it takes a few minutes on the water running for it to reach him. It was an old hotel, so things aren't perfect. Kevin tells me that's no excuse. I've traveled the world and stayed in older hotels than this, and I have never had this problem. He asks for a refund, and I tell him I'm going to make a phone call to my boss first. I head inside, grab my phone, and they ask to speak with Kevin in my stead. I go back out and pass off my phone to them, and I get the pleasure of re-listening to the complaints about this, telling my boss we were completely overcharging for our rooms, and we were scamming people. Kevin started threatening to leave bad reviews for the weeks on end if he didn't get his refund. And let's be clear here, we are a small family-run business who just started using Expedia, so there are only like 2 reviews on there. If they really did start having a ton of bad reviews, our rating and resulting business would suffer. After some small back and forth, they agreed to at least accept a full refund on one of the rooms they stayed in. I go out to the temporary office to get it started, and the wife comes by and watches me as I'm doing it. Our system wasn't working how I remembered it to, so I had to call my aunt and wake her up to be reminded how to do it. But in the end, I had to do it a different way because the system had changed. I ended up having to refund the entire amount and then recharge their card for half the price. The wife asked for a receipt, and I told her I could do that, but I didn't think the refund would show up on it. Indeed, it didn't. It still showed the total to be $155-something, but I pointed out to her that $72.46 had been charged and there was a balance due of $72.46. And that's where her refund was, and her card would only be charged the $72.46. I believe these were the prices, don't quote me on that. She herself started getting snippy at me, not understanding why I didn't need to see the card to issue the refund. This is the first hotel I've ever worked in, so I don't know how other places do it, but here the guest information and payment information is saved in the system for easier guest returns. That way we don't have to re-enter all their information again. So I didn't need to see her card again because her information was already in the system. Like, I don't even ask to see any IDs. We're really laid back here. Anyway, she was still confused about the receipts, so I just showed her directly on my computer how I processed the refund. Before she left, she then told me the Wi-Fi wasn't working. I told her it was working fine because my own phone was connected with the Wi-Fi. She told me, then you must have written it down wrong because our daughter is super tech savvy and she couldn't get it to work. Which is nonsense. The password has never changed in the time I've been here, and it's worked perfectly fine for every other guest. Other than a few old couples who I had to go out and enter in the password for them myself. They're the ones who've told me the number on the door to call doesn't work, despite me entering the number into my phone myself and it working just fine. After they were gone, I went into each of the rooms they stayed in, and sure enough the space heaters were still on their lowest settings, and the water was heating up just fine. There was nothing wrong with the rooms from what I could tell, and it really seemed like he only found things to complain about so he wouldn't have to pay full price for the rooms. If they had called me any time during the night to ask or clarify about the heaters, I would have been more than willing to go out there, find out about the propane heaters and shut them off, and then show them how to turn up their space heaters. Like I said before, I'm here 24/7 and I'm available 24/7. My car was crushed a month ago, so it's not like I can go anywhere. Honestly, this has been one of the least entitled people I've dealt with while working here so far, but it's the most recent. Most people don't have a problem with our rooms, and I've had people leave tips and notes thanking me for the nice room. The rooms are rustic, but they aren't bad. I clean them myself and constantly check for things like bedbugs and mice. So you tell me, am I overreacting here? Hey everybody, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to Idiots in the Wild, episode 109. And thank you very much to everybody who allowed me to use their stories in this video. Before you go, please do boop the like button, I would appreciate it. Thank you kindly. I don't think there's any other business today, so we'll just move right along to Hellfreezer's question of the day. And today's question is, when you have a list of chores to complete, things that need to get done, do you write down an actual list, be it a written paper list or something on your phone, or do you just kind of file them away in your mind and hope you will actually remember everything? I generally will file them away in my head, unless it's something that absolutely must get done within a specific time period, in which case I'll make a note so that I don't have to go back later and waste time and, doing all the things I missed. But let me know what you think in a comment below. With that, I'm gonna head off for now. So until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourselves.